What if the way you shop today never existed? No Amazon, no one-day delivery, no instant access to millions of products. And what if I told you this entire system was built on a series of decisions made by one man, Jeff Bezos? This is not just a business story. This is a story about decisions that changed the world. To understand the magnitude of Jeff Bezos's first alpha decision, we have to travel back to 1994. The world was on the cusp of a digital revolution, but for most, life was still firmly analog. On Wall Street, the heart of global finance, a different kind of revolution was brewing. Here, in the gleaming towers of Manhattan, fortunes were made and lost on the razor's edge of information and ambition. This was the arena of the titans, the world that had not only accepted Jeff Bezos, but had elevated him to its inner sanctum. It was here that Bezos made his first alpha decision, when he walked away from absolute certainty. At just 30 years old, he was the youngest ever senior vice president at D.E. Shaw & Co., a quantitative hedge fund renowned for its brilliant, data-driven minds. This wasn't just a job, it was a golden ticket. His office wasn't just a room, it was a perch high above the city, a symbol of having arrived. He was on a trajectory aimed straight for the stratosphere of high finance. He had staggering financial security, a career path paved with gold, and the kind of prestige that opens any door. He was living the dream that society sells us: power, influence, and a seven-figure income. It was a life meticulously constructed, a fortress of stability built on intellectual prowess and relentless hard work. Everything was predictable. Everything was safe. And for a mind like Bezos's, that was precisely the problem. Because while his days were spent analyzing financial markets, his mind had become captivated by a single staggering statistic he'd stumbled upon in a report. The internet was growing at a rate of 2,300% per year. This wasn't just growth. It was a biological explosion, a force of nature, an entirely new world being born in lines of code and flickering pixels. He saw not just a network, but a new civilization. And in this new world, he believed people would buy things. Starting with books, the idea was absurd to his colleagues. An everything store, starting with books, sold through a computer? It was a fantasy. But for Bezos, the logic was a steel trap. Books were universal, with millions of unique titles, something no physical store could ever hope to stock. The internet was the only place big enough to build a true bookstore. The seed of Amazon was planted, but for it to grow, it had to break through the concrete of his current life, and so began the internal war. He felt the paralyzing fear of leaving that comfort. The conflict was immense, a battle fought in the quiet moments after the trading floor fell silent. He would later describe this as a choice between a life of passion and a life of comfort. His boss, David Shaw, tried to reason with him, suggesting he take 48 hours to think it over, reminding him it was a great idea for someone who didn't already have a great job. On one side, the safety of the gilded cage, a life of guaranteed success and admiration. On the other, a wild, unproven idea, a gamble on a future that existed only in his imagination and in that one staggering statistic. It was the quintessential battle between the known and the unknown, between the tangible present and the possible future. This is where the story often misses a crucial element: his first investor and most important partner, his wife, Mackenzie. He didn't make this decision in a vacuum. He presented the idea to her, the wild dream and the terrifying risks. He had a good job, a stable life. She had her own career as a novelist. Leaving it all behind was a shared sacrifice. Her response was not one of hesitation, but of immediate support. She told him, "I'm not a business person, but I can hear the passion in your voice." She was all in. Her belief became his anchor. With that, the decision was made. The alpha choice. They quit their jobs, packed their lives into a car, and began the long cross-country drive from New York City to Seattle. Why Seattle? Because it was a tech hub with a small population, which meant a favorable tax environment for a mail-order business. Even in this leap of faith, there was cold, hard logic. While Mackenzie drove, Bezos sat in the passenger seat, tapping out a business plan on a laptop, frantically making financial projections as the manicured lawns of the East Coast gave way to the vast, uncertain plains of the heartland. They landed not in a sleek corporate headquarters, but in a rented house with a garage in Bellevue, a suburb of Seattle. This garage would become the company's first office, its first warehouse, its nerve center. The mahogany desk was replaced by a door propped up on sawhorses. The hum of Wall Street was replaced by the hum of a dial-up modem. He was battling the powerful pull of the life he had against the one he was now building, nail by nail, book by book. In the damp chill of a Pacific Northwest garage, he had traded a guaranteed future for a mere possibility. He had left the calm, predictable harbor for the vast, misty, and treacherous open sea. This is the anatomy of a true alpha decision. It's not just about taking a risk, it's about consciously and deliberately trading security for purpose. It's the recognition that comfort is the biggest barrier to growth. He saw something others ignored. The internet was growing at 2,300%. To most, this was a novelty, a chaotic realm for academics and hobbyists, not a serious platform for commerce. But Bezos saw the underlying signal. He understood this exponential force wasn't a trend, it was a tidal wave. He saw a new frontier, a digital Wild West where the rules were not yet written. The biggest opportunities are invisible to most people. He made a decision using a powerful idea: regret minimization. He projected himself forward to age 80 and asked himself a simple question: will I regret not trying this? He knew he wouldn't regret trying and failing. That would be a lesson, a story. But he knew, with absolute certainty, that he would forever regret not trying at all. Pacing slows, voice becomes profound. In the end, we regret what we didn't try. The grand vision was an everything store. But Bezos knew you couldn't build an everything store on day one. He needed a strategic wedge, a starting point. He didn't start big, he started with books. The choice was brilliant. There were millions of titles, far more than any physical store could stock. They were a commodity, easy to ship and not easily damaged. It was the perfect scalable entry point to learn the business of e-commerce. Start small, but think big. Amazon didn't focus on competitors, it focused on customers. Bezos famously brought an empty chair to meetings, telling his team it was occupied by the most important person in the room, the customer. This meant sacrificing short-term profit for long-term trust, like allowing negative reviews on the site, even if it cost them a sale. It was all about spinning the flywheel. Every decision was a push to create more value for the customer, which in turn fueled growth. If you take care of customers, success follows. In 2000, the dot-com bubble, fueled by hype and speculation, finally burst. When everything collapsed, companies worth billions became worthless overnight. Fear and panic gripped the market. The year is 2000. The dot-com bubble, a frenzy of digital optimism, has burst with spectacular violence. For Amazon, the poster child of this new economy, the fallout is catastrophic. Its stock, once soaring at over $100 a share, plummets to less than $6. A staggering 94% of its value erased. The financial press, which had once celebrated Bezos as a visionary, now sharpened its knives. Headlines screamed, "Amazon.bomb." Analysts declared the company doomed, a casualty of its own ambition, destined to be a footnote in business history. The world was convinced the dream was over. Inside Amazon's headquarters, the pressure was suffocating. The temptation to pivot, to slash and burn, to abandon the long-term strategy for short-term survival was immense. The board was nervous, employees were terrified, and the market was screaming for a retreat. But Jeff Bezos remained an island of calm in a sea of panic. He didn't just resist the pressure. He used it as a clarifying force. He forced his team to ignore the deafening noise of the stock market and focus only on the signals coming from the one constituency that truly mattered: the customer. This is the crucible where true belief is forged. It's easy to hold convictions when the sun is shining and stock prices are rising. But when the storm hits, when the world tells you you're wrong, that's when you discover what you truly believe. For Bezos, that belief was an unwavering, almost religious faith in customer centricity. He knew that while stock prices were fickle, human desire for better service, lower prices, and wider selection was permanent. And in the wreckage of the crash, he saw an opportunity not just to survive, but to build something indestructible. As Amazon emerged from the dot-com winter, bruised but alive, Bezos conducted a deep analysis of the business. He identified the single biggest point of failure, the one area where Amazon's promise to its customers was most vulnerable. It wasn't the website, it wasn't the product selection. It was the moment the package left their warehouse. Amazon had built a revolutionary digital storefront, but for the most critical part of the customer experience, the physical delivery, it was completely reliant on partners like UPS and FedEx. This dependency was a gaping hole in their armor. When a package was late, damaged, or lost, the customer didn't blame the shipping company. They blamed Amazon. The brand's reputation was in the hands of outsiders who didn't share its obsession with the customer experience. Holiday seasons were a recurring nightmare, with shipping partners becoming overwhelmed, leading to catastrophic delays that directly translated into customer outrage. Bezos realized that to truly own the customer relationship from click to doorbell, Amazon couldn't just be an e-commerce company. It had to become a logistics company. The decision that followed was one of the boldest in corporate history. While Wall Street was still demanding lean operations and a focus on digital-only assets, Bezos made a colossal, multi-billion-dollar bet in the opposite direction. He decided to go deep into the messy, expensive, and complex world of physical infrastructure. Amazon would build its own system. It started with fulfillment centers, not just warehouses, but technologically advanced nerve centers, strategically placed across the country to reduce shipping times. This was a declaration of war on inefficiency. Amazon poured billions into automating these facilities, culminating in the 2012 acquisition of Kiva Systems. These orange robots revolutionized the warehouse floor, bringing shelves to workers instead of the other way around, dramatically increasing speed and accuracy. Every inch of the fulfillment center was optimized, every process relentlessly refined, all in service of a single goal, getting the right product to the right customer, faster than anyone else. But the warehouse was only half the battle. The final, most expensive part of the journey was the last mile to the customer's doorstep. So Amazon built that too. It launched its own fleet of cargo planes, creating an air freight network to rival the giants. It built a ground network of trucks and, most visibly, the ubiquitous blue Amazon delivery vans, operated through a network of independent partners. This wasn't just about adding capacity, it was about gaining total control. Amazon could now dictate delivery windows, experiment with new services like Sunday delivery, and gather invaluable data on the entire logistics chain. This massive capital expenditure was a move no one saw coming and few could afford to follow. It created a competitive moat, a deep, wide, and expensive barrier to entry. A new startup could build a beautiful website in a weekend. But could they build a global network of fulfillment centers, a fleet of cargo jets, and a last-mile delivery service? It was almost impossible. While rivals were still competing on website features, Amazon was now competing on physics, on infrastructure, on a scale that was simply staggering. The lesson is profound and universal. In any system, the point where you depend on others is your point of greatest weakness. True strength, true resilience, comes from owning the critical components of your value chain. For Amazon, that was delivery. For you, it might be your manufacturing, your software platform, or your core intellectual property. The alpha decision is to identify that critical dependency and, if necessary, make the terrifying, expensive, and audacious choice to build it yourself. Because when you control your system, you control your destiny. You control your future. The most powerful decision was not visible. Born from its own internal chaos, Amazon decided to turn its expertise in running massive-scale computing into a product for other companies. It was called Amazon Web Services. The idea was seen as risky and nonsensical. Why would a retail company get into the business of selling raw computing power? But it became the hidden engine of the company, the backbone of the modern internet, and the source of the majority of Amazon's profits. The biggest opportunities are hidden beneath the surface. By the mid-2000s, Amazon was strong, but one decision would make it dominant. Amazon changed customer behavior. With one decision. Prime was never just about logistics. It was a radical, audacious bet on human psychology. At its core was a deep understanding of a cognitive bias known as the sunk cost fallacy. Once a customer paid that initial annual fee, a powerful psychological switch was flipped. They felt a deep, almost subconscious compulsion to get their money's worth. Every purchase decision was reframed. Before Prime, the question was, do I need this enough to justify the shipping cost and the wait? It was a moment of friction, a chance to reconsider. But after Prime, the question became, why I get this from Amazon? The shipping is already paid for. That single change transformed casual, infrequent buyers into high-frequency, deeply loyal shoppers. Amazon was no longer a store, it was a utility, the default starting point for commerce. But free shipping was just the Trojan horse. Amazon began methodically layering value into the membership. First came Prime Video, a direct assault on Netflix, using the profits from retail to fund a massive content library. Then came Prime Music, taking on Spotify. Then Prime Reading, and a dozen other benefits. Each new service wasn't just another feature. It was another golden thread weaving the customer deeper into the Amazon tapestry. The perceived value of the membership grew exponentially, while the price increased only incrementally. It created a self-reinforcing ecosystem of value that was nearly impossible to leave. To cancel Prime was no longer about losing free shipping. It was about losing your movies, your music, your photo storage, your digital life. Amazon wasn't just playing the game better than its rivals, it was changing the rules of the game itself. They understood a fundamental truth: change behavior, and you control the market. Through all this unprecedented success, as Amazon grew from a garage startup into a global behemoth, Jeff Bezos was relentlessly paranoid about one thing: day two. And so, he anchored the entire company to a single, powerful philosophy: day one. It's a concept he articulated year after year in his shareholder letters. Day one is the mindset of a startup. It's about invention, agility, and an obsessive focus on the customer. It's about making high-quality, high-velocity decisions. It's about embracing powerful external trends with gusto. Day one is about staying hungry, nimble, and paranoid. It means you must always stay like a startup, never become comfortable. Practice continuous, relentless innovation. Day two, in contrast, is stasis, followed by irrelevance, followed by excruciating, painful decline, followed by death. And that is why it is always day one. The moment you feel you've arrived, the moment you celebrate your success as a destination, is the moment you begin to die. You stop growing. But how do you maintain day one at the scale of hundreds of thousands of employees? You can't just rely on good intentions. Bezos's answer was another core principle: build mechanisms, not just goals. A goal is a desired result, like improve customer service. But good intentions don't scale. A mechanism is a process, a tool, a system that makes the desired outcome inevitable, even when no one is actively thinking about it. It's a machine that runs itself. For customer service, Amazon built the Anden cord mechanism, borrowed from Toyota. Any agent could pull the cord on a defective product, removing it from the website until the root cause was fixed. The mechanism didn't rely on a manager's approval. It empowered the frontline employee and forced the organization to solve problems permanently. This philosophy permeated every corner of the company. Instead of PowerPoint presentations, which can obscure lazy thinking, they instituted the 6-pager mechanism. a narratively structured memo that forces clarity of thought before a meeting even begins. Instead of bloated teams, slowed by communication overhead, they created the two-pizza team mechanism. If a team couldn't be fed by 2 pizzas, it was too big. These weren't just quirky corporate habits, they were carefully engineered mechanisms designed to preserve the day one mindset. They were systems built to fight entropy, to resist the gravitational pull of day 2. Looking back, it's easy to see Amazon's rise as inevitable. But it was never about luck. It was about decisions. A chain of thousands of them, compounded over decades, all guided by a consistent and ruthless philosophy. The decision to leave a secure job, the decision to focus on the long term, the decision to obsess over customers, not competitors, the decision to build, not buy, the decision to turn a cost center into a profit engine with AWS, the decision to bet on psychology with Prime, the decision to institutionalize day one with mechanisms, each one a link in a chain that pulled the future into the present. And so, the question is not what Jeff Bezos did or what Amazon built. Their story is a case study, a blueprint of conviction and long-term thinking. The real question is what their story reveals about our own choices. We all have our own day two. The comfortable job, the familiar routine, the path of least resistance. We all have goals we aspire to, but how many of us have built the mechanisms to achieve them? We all face pivotal moments, forks in the road where one path is easy and the other is hard, but leads to growth. The question is, what decision are you avoiding? And maybe the most important decision is the one you're about to make. Subscribe to Alpha Decisions for more videos on the powerful decisions that built millionaires and changed the world.